Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Infinite Way where spirituality meets humanity. And it brings me great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Linda Tello. And Dr. Linda Tello is the CEO and co-founder of Whole Earth Engineering. And instead of going through a dissertation of a regular biography, I want this meeting of Dr. Tello to unveil naturally. So we're just going to jump right into it. Okay. So hello and welcome, Dr. Linda Tello.
Hello, Dr. Enolia Foti. How are you?
I'm
I'm so
fine.
excited to be able to have that title for you because I know you recently were honored with a doctorate from an university. I believe you said it was in India. So I am so like overjoyed that your work has been recognized and you
Thank
have been
you.
bestowed this title because
It was
it's so well
actually from the
deserved.
United Nations, not
Oh,
in.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So
amazing. Well,
Doctorate of Peace from the United Nations. So yeah.
wow. Wow. Beautiful. Yeah, it is so well deserved. So I'm excited
Thank
to call you Dr. Enolia Foti also.
you.
Thank you.
Linda. It's so, and I hope you don't mind me saying Linda.
No, please. You and I know each other. Like the audience should know we're actually friends. So it's not
We're
like,
actually very good friends, very, very.
acquaintances.
It's so good to have you on here. Your life has been a journey. I'm so excited to talk to you about several different things. And
Thank
instead
you.
of unveiling our topic, we're just going to just jump right into it. And I want you to share some of the love that you have going on in your life right
Well, one, my friendship with you, I'm going to start with that since we're on your podcast. I feel so loved by you because you have been steadfast for me and you are one of the safe havens. And I hope people are able to experience that also through your podcast. But you are one of the safe havens, not only for my heart, my mind, my soul, my spirit. You know, it's you're my friend and but you're a true friend in that. And I know I've called you crying and all this and because life is challenging for all of us, and I'm just so grateful for the love you give me because sometimes and I know I've said this several times, I'm like, I want to call you one day with some exciting news to share with you because my life has been a little challenging in these last few months, more so than normally. And so I just want to say thank you. So that love that you've given to me through our friendship, I think is one of the most beautiful expressions of love that I have this moment in my life. So thank you for that.
Thank you
So
so much. Oh my God, you know it's the same. You
yeah, thank you.
know.
Yes, thank you. Another form of love, I'm going to say my parents. My parents are staying with me at this moment because unfortunately about a year and a half ago, they were helping me move in to my home that I purchased, and their phone started blowing up at like 9 a.m. I remember it was a Halloween, which was your birthday. And
Yeah.
yeah, it just turned out that there was a 3 alarm fire at their condo out in Maryland where they're from, and about 100 families became displaced. So I think one of the other forms of love that I'm receiving is having an opportunity to experience my parents again as an adult. Because oftentimes, as young people, we have a certain perception of our parents. And I know, like myself and you, and probably many of the viewers of your podcast, have really done a lot of soul searching and understand the multi-generational trauma that's been passed down. So when you're a child, you view your parents in a certain way, and you're not able to really see their humanity and their gifts and the areas where they can continue to grow.
Right.
So as an adult, a form of love for me has been to start to understand how they express love. It may not have been in the way as a child that would have been more fulfilling for me, but I think
Hmm.
also it's because as a child I didn't understand their humanity. how we all
Right.
come with certain gifts and certain challenges and certain background
Right.
experiences and all that. So I think as a
Right.
child, we tend to be more, I don't know, the word demanding is coming to my mind. So, right. So as an adult, I have done a lot of like psychotherapy work, as you know, on like my multi-generational trauma. But I think one of the most beautiful forms of love, and it's an evolving form because we all get triggered from those experiences we had. But I think for me, a form of love that my parents are giving me, and I think it's also part of the universe has been given me, is this opportunity to experience my parents again in like a home setting, but the dynamics have somewhat changed. So it's like they're staying with me, you know what I mean, as opposed to the other
Yes.
way
Yes.
around. So
Yes.
it's shifted the perspective in how I see behaviors that they expressed when I was a child, and seeing it more from a lens of an adult and no longer a child, but also giving me the opportunity to be like, oh, wow, that just triggered me, but not just be like, blah, back at them, but
Right.
recognize, wow, that was a trigger on some of the things that I've been working on. And how can I respond back with compassion, not only for them, but compassion for my inner child? Because I still need to work on those traumas, those inner wounds that I got as a child, because again, a lot of multi-generational trauma. And just a little bit about that, my mother and my father are both from Colombia, and my parents grew up during the era called La Violencia, which my understanding is one of the most violent political times in Colombian history. So
Right.
there was like the liberals and the conservatives, like these political parties. And I'm gonna confess, I'm not fully like educated on this story, this history. But what I understand, it was like the precursor to a lot of like the FARC and a lot of the paramilitary groups that are still kind of fighting in Colombia. So it was very violent. So my mother's family disbanded, and she had to figure out how to fend for herself at like the age of 12, 13. So it
Okay.
was, yeah, so it was pretty challenging for her, and having to learn how to really parent herself when she was still a child, so a lot of those things. And then my father had a lot of experiences, again, with Colombia being what they call now developing nation. I was schooled on that. No longer third world country, fourth world country. I think the proper term is developing nation.
Developing
um,
nation.
yeah, so he experienced what a lot of people do, and even some of our native communities here, because of the traumas that happened before his generation, like into my grandparents' generation.
Right.
Before the La Violencia was the War of 1,000 Days. So right there's two generations before me that experienced like civil wars. So there's definitely a lot of trauma in there because the families become disbanded, so, and this is not a unique story to me. However, my story is unique to me, but the experience of people having like familial generational stories of not having stable family structures, that's
Right.
something that really, especially when you're uprooted from your culture and you're plopped into another, like as a refugee or an immigrant or however it is, you're having to redefine who you are in a new space, and that itself creates trauma. So
Right.
it's very complex. So coming back to your question of how I experience love, I think the universe has given me the opportunity, like I was saying again, to now understand this history that created the types of traumas that I experience and that my parents experience and passed on to me because their parents experience. But then like recognizing that I, as a spiritual person, and as I'm going to say this word, and it might be loaded, but it's what comes to mind, is a very privileged individual in this world to have had my parents make decisions that put me in a space where I had access to education and access to
Right.
opportunities that they didn't have. And that's what I mean by privilege. Not that like, oh, I'm so much better, nothing like that, but it's just like that I'm starting to, as an adult, recognize how opportunities to education, not only in terms of like school, but also health education, you know, psychological education, all these opportunities, they're a privilege. You know, like what, over 8 billion people in the world, or close to that. Not everybody gets access to even like a basic form of that, so they can learn, especially women and girls
Right.
around the world.
Yes.
I'm not ignoring the boys
Sure.
at all, you know, because that is a challenge too. But I'm a woman, so I'm going to speak from it from that perspective. Um, so many women and girls around the world do not have those opportunities. So I think that's another form of love, that I have the opportunity that you're giving me through this platform to recognize that I have that, I've had that privilege. So I think another form of love is to recognize that as a form of self recognition, self love,
Right.
and then be able to like speak that and share my truth in some way, so that hopefully somebody listening to it, as we were kind of chatting before we started recording, somebody listening to that can figure out, because it's never easy. You know, when I say
No.
figure out, you know, some people, I don't want them, I don't want anyone to think that I'm making light of like, oh, you should figure it out. It's like, no, it's challenging, but like recognize that if you do look for opportunities, I think you will find them. And I think that's where the spirituality and the energetics come in. Because if you focus on something, and you probably talked about this in several of your other podcasts, it's like when you put attention on something, that's where your intention goes and your energy goes there. And things start to blossom, like when you're planting a seed. You know, you put your
Well,
energy,
you
you
have the
plant.
perfect example. You have three loving animals that love you unconditionally, and how you found them and how they all came to be under your purview and is a story in and of itself. And their growth and their giving of unconditional love and their flourishing because they
Yeah.
are loved,
Well,
correct?
yes, and it's funny, yes, but this is also kind of, it's an example exactly what you're talking about, where you plant the seed and the universe will bring it to you, which I realized next time I need to ask for winning lotto tickets, and not the $4 winning one, the one with like the lots of zeros, like before the decimal, because it was so funny when I adopted my dog Jude and Mia, like specifically from the pound, because I'd recently lost, and this is another form of love, I'd recently lost my service dog, Mr. Oliver. So that was another form of love, or is another form of love, like
Yes,
from your animals,
exactly.
as you're saying. And it was
Yes.
funny because I had adopted Jude and Mia, and I remember, I think I said it out loud. And I know this is something you always tell me. You're like, if you want something, say it out loud so the universe
Wow.
hears it. Apparently, the universe was listening, because I said, the dogs that I'm supposed to have, the universe will bring to me. And that was what I said. And it was like so, I don't know. I'm using the word insane, but I'm really learning to use my words better. So I don't think insanity is the right word. I don't really have the most appropriate word. Maybe it was kismet, you know, synchronicity. Um, like, no lie, within a week, this little brown dog with this other gray dog. Unfortunately, the little gray female, she passed away. We're not really sure why. We think maybe she got bit by a poisonous spider or something. But the death of the little gray dog was a catalyst, because I named my dog Hershey. He's like it turns out he's an Australian Kelpie. And so he was running around the neighborhood, and he's got a really like deep guttural bark. So it's like, oh my gosh, this dog is like aggressive and scary. But he's really not. It was just fear because he was thrown, he literally was just abandoned at the end of my block, and where I live in Albuquerque, my neighborhood, it butts up to Kirtland Air Force Base. So he was living alone with the other little dog, kind of going underneath and coming back under the fence for the military base. And so long story short, one of my neighbor's friends was visiting her, and they went for a hike, and somehow, I think it was because his little friend, I called her Gray because she was kind of a gray brindle dog, she died. And so he'd been laying, and this is another form of love that's so beautiful. He was laying by her side for almost 3 days, because I was seeing him down like the side of the base, like there's like a trail. And I was like, this is interesting. I'd never seen him behave there. I thought, oh, maybe he's sunning himself or something, because I didn't see the dog that had passed away. She was laying underneath a bush. So he was guarding her body. That was his friend. So he was taking care of her, I guess, as she passed. I don't know much how animals pass, but he was guarding her. And to me, that was beautiful once I figured that out, because my neighbor's friend that they'd gone hiking with all these dogs, he allowed her to get close to him. And so she was able to put a collar. And because I had mentioned to them that we were trying to like get, capture the dog so we can, make sure he was okay and find him a good home. Knock, knock, knock. And like she comes over, and it was so funny because like I opened the door, and then here comes Hershey, like literally through the door. I was like, oh my goodness. So I was like, oh wow, the universe literally brought me the dog. And so many of the other, there were about 5 ladies in our neighborhood. We were trying to like capture him, figure out how we can help him, either through a rescue or rehoming him.
Right.
Unfortunately, now after like the whole COVID adopt a million dogs situation, now it's a really dire situation where people are dumping their animals because maybe they don't have the resources to care for them. But before you do that, check with your local pound, because a lot of them will provide you food to feed your animal, if it's for that reason. But yeah, I ended up keeping him because I don't know, I'd already named him before he had allowed himself to be caught, and because I was kind of one of the people in the neighborhood feeding him. So I think when I named him, which is interesting, it goes back to the medicine wheel, because you and I did a master class on the medicine wheel. When you go to the east, the place of illumination is when you can name something. And so I knew the moment, even before he'd come to my door, I knew when I had given him a name that he was going to be mine, because I was like, I'm already naming this dog. I was like, great.
He was
I was
yours
thinking,
before you just acknowledged it. That's all. He knew.
Exactly. It was really, really interesting. And I was like, I named him, so I knew. So that's another form of love. And I don't want to like belabor this at this point, but that, and then I think the last form that I want to touch upon to answer your question is self-love. I'm really, I'm learning, I'm really learning that a lot. Like I'm in my 50s. I'm not gonna hide. I've earned it kind of thing. So I'm
ownership.
yeah, I'm really learning to love myself. And I think as a minority woman in a Western space, the United States, growing up, there were a lot of things that I experienced and heard, the discrimination, bias, stereotypes. I don't need to go into like those like specific examples, but there were things that I experienced where I I questioned, oh, am I asking for too much? Because I would hear things like my standards were too high, or I was too demanding, or you think too much kind of thing. So just statements that would question my way of being and the things that I wanted. So again, I'd done a lot of work looking at like the trauma, because that also, when you have trauma, makes you question. It's like, oh, do I deserve to ask for this? And it's like, if I'm asking for something, then it's like, oh, I'm challenging the power of the hierarchy. So who am I to request that? Who am I not? I am a child of God, the universe, like everyone else. I have the same rights to be respected. My my box, my standard, how I want to be treated in the world and approached in the world may not be like anybody else's. And I'm learning that that's okay. And I think
It
that's
is.
one of yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges. So it's kind of like, if I want people to treat me in terms of like, oh, you you must smile at me, I'm just kind of making up an example. You must smile at me whenever you say you're my friend. And if I don't get a smile from you, then you're not my friend. I'm like, that's me. It's like, I want my friends to smile at me, kind of thing. So and I'm just making up an example. I'm not going to call
Yeah.
it silly, just making up an example. So there's a certain thing and it's mine. This is my thing. This is the way I want to feel loved by others. And if I communicate that and I need that, it's okay. But if there's somebody that's like, well, I don't want to ever smile and then I'm just like, I can still love them, but they may not be what I need, because in that interaction, it it it's how am I feeling? What is the energy? Because you and I have been talking a lot. What is that energetic exchange? If their energy, they may have good intentions, but if the way that their energy is being like given to me um hurts me, and then they can't acknowledge their action, kind of meet me halfway, like, okay, maybe I won't give you any teeth, but I'll give you a I give you a like, and I'm like, okay, I can, you know what I mean? As long as there is a recognition that this is important to me, it doesn't have to show up exactly how I would like it to, because it's about the intention behind the person. They may have their reasons. Like, I just saw this really cute Netflix movie. It was called King Kingland, the Land King. I can't remember. It was this Korean like soap opera, and the guy didn't like to smile. He didn't like people smiling at him because it reminded him of some childhood trauma. So I want to recognize that people may have that. So, but like in the soap, like in this little telenovela Korean one, he really loved this other young lady in the film. So he started making an effort. Like, he couldn't give her the genuine smile that she wanted right away, but he started making an effort by, and then slowly he started
With the
to
mind.
understand his traumas behind that. And she was okay. She was like, okay, for some reason, I don't know. She's like, I don't know why you can't smile, but I will take that because you're honoring me and my request where you can. And
Yes.
that's,
Yes.
and yeah, so I'm learning that it's okay if I have standards that maybe other people like, they're so high. And I'm like, yeah, they're really not. I think unfortunately in this world, we need to have more self-love. And many of us are told to lower our standards. And so that,
Exactly.
yeah, that like takes a lot of the love away, because my mom always would say people can only give you what they have. So if they have a very low level of love for themselves, they're not going to put out a high level because they don't even have it for themselves. So,
Right. Right.
so
So
I'm,
if you
I'm really,
sit back and you really think about this alignment in terms of understanding the many levels of love and the dimensions of love, really,
mhm.
is this important right now? Why is this the depth of thought right now?
Hmm, the depth of thought. Well, as you know, I was diagnosed. I'm just going to jump right into it. I was diagnosed with a meningioma in October, and it was a complete surprise to me because I was like, I'd never heard of it. Um, I kept having sinus issues. Like, it just felt like I could never breathe out of the left side of my nose. I was like, well, I tried all, like, the regular antibiotics, blah, 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 for several years. And it always just seemed like I'd get these consistent sinus issues and I could just never breathe out of my nose. So I'm like, I think I need to see an ENT. But what was interesting before I decided to go see the ENT was that for some reason, when I would go outside, I would I kept seeing people with scars on their heads.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, and I remember looking at people that had a scar on their head, and I was like, oh, I wonder what their story is. I wonder what happened. But I thought it was interesting because I'd never really paid too much attention. It's like we've all seen people that have something, but it was like I was starting to kind of hone in on it. And I think, to answer your question about what's the level, like the depth, why why looking at these depths of love is I think that my body was telling me that I needed to have something like that. There was like this
Yeah.
energetic thing. Like I don't know what the word is other than thing right now. I don't have an appropriate word for it. An intuition possibly is the word, that there was something that I had going on in my head that I was unaware of, and that you know what I mean? Like that inner knowing,
Yeah.
your connection to your higher self is pointing me in that direction. So I went to see the ENT, and she was like, "You have a deviated septum, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Oh, I'd had the surgery when I was younger." And she's like, "Only about 10% of surgeries for deviated septums take." So she was like, "We may have to do it again." And so she ordered a CT scan. And when she did that, the results came back that there was the potential for a meningoma. And I had never heard of it before. I was like, "What is this?" And my father, he retired from the National Library of Medicine, so I know OMA. I was like, "Doesn't that mean cancer?" I was like, "Oh," kind of freaking out. But I did a little research, and a meningoma is like a benign tumor 85% of the time, I believe, like for women. And then
Right.
I think they were saying for men, a meningoma oftentimes for men is a more aggressive cancerous type. So, people want to learn more, I suggest go to PubMed, the National Library of Medicine's website, and they can find all sorts of, medical articles. And one that's not so technical is WebMD. Also, you can get a little more of like more lay people's terms for describing these things. Yeah. But so in order to make sure that this is what it was, the ENT ordered an MRI, and then they came back and they're like, "Yep, there it is." And my thing was like, "Oh, space alien baby, how appropriate, I'm in New Mexico." And yeah, so to answer your question about the depth of love, like even coming to this point of doing this podcast with you was a bit of a challenge for me, because I was like, wow, should I really say things to the world that I'm still trying to figure out myself? How do I feel about this? Should I really do this? Because I'm still trying to figure out my own feelings about it. Because like there's fear, definitely say that there's fear, because I'm like, wow, I'm gonna get a hole in my head. Happy New Year, you get a hole in your head, kind of thing. And it wasn't something that I was expecting. But I will say one of the things that helped me to make this decision to share, and like part of the fear, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, was I looked online. And it turns out, I found out that Maria Menounos, she's quite a famous individual. She had had a meningoma, except she had one that was way more challenging as far as surgery. That the one I have, mine's in the frontal lobe here. She had hers in their brainstem. So, and I remember reading her article that I saw online, and I was like, okay, thank you for, she didn't have too many details, but she did kind of share her overall experience, and it helped me. So as you said earlier, before we
That
started, I think you
sharing your
were
story, that you are helping somebody else who's actually going through the same thing. And
exactly.
we it's not just a matter of showing compassion, but then it's a matter of knowing that number one, you are loved. Number two, you're not alone. Number
Hmm.
three, that you give us as friends an opportunity to rally around you, to
Thank
show that
you.
love, and to allow that to be the support that carries you through the circumstances that you have to go through. So
Yes.
me, and you know that I create platforms for people to be able to
Hmm.
speak in so many different levels. And
Yes.
it's important because we learn from each other's stories. There's a ripple
Hmm.
effect that takes place if we can just give people the opportunity to listen and to not
Yeah.
stay in complete fear. And it's okay not to have all of the answers. That's another
Yeah.
thing that we do. We think that we have to have all of the answers, or that we have to show up a certain way because society expects us to show up. And as your friend, it's just like, you show up any way you want. I'll hold space for you.
Yes. Thank you.
And sometimes that day may be strong, and the other times it may not be so. And
Hmm.
it doesn't matter. It,
Yeah.
it it doesn't matter.
And I think what I hear, well, what's coming to my mind as I'm hearing you speak, I've come to the place where surrender, just
Hmm.
give it to spirit. And I want to share a few things that I've been kind of weaving in my experience. I will say
Please.
the first thing that I did when I heard that I had this meningioma, I'm like, brain tumor, okay. Louise Hayes, I love her book. What's it? Heal your body, I think is what it's called. It's like a
Okay.
little tiny book. And what she did was, I believe she was a nurse. And so she treated many, many people with different ailments. So she ended up cataloging all of the different ailments, like it's in order from like A to Z in her little book. And brain tumor is one of them that she had there. And when I saw, like, she has like the cause of what she did, it was more like qualitative, like she did all the interviews with people and she kind of, coded it in a way, and she identified like kind of like the core theme behind the physical illnesses. So she identified like it was like maybe the spiritual or the psychological theme behind what was the core that manifested as the physical illness. And then
Right.
she gives like these little affirmations that you can say. So it's just 3 columns in her book. So the first one is, the ailment. The second one is, the potential core reason, and there's always outliers, but it's like the core reason she did from her research. And then there's an affirmation, that you can say to help heal that. And what was interesting for mine, it said brain tumors, like stuck thinking. And I was like, I was like, okay. And like I'm an engineer, but
Right.
I'm also very creative. But I've been feeling in the last 15 or so years that I'd really wandered away, and I hadn't done anything really like creative, artistic in that way. Because when I decided to be an engineer when I was in college, undecided major kind of thing, I was like, should I do art or should I do engineering? And I was terrified of math. Like seriously, I was afraid of math. So I said to myself, Mike, I will never lose my creativity, but if I don't make myself face my fear of mathematics and learn it, I won't learn it. It's not going to have osmosis and just go in my head.
Right.
So I feel like recognizing that, yes, I'd been stuck, and I'm still figuring out how I can unstick myself. I don't know how to say that, from like this very logical engineering kind of left brain thing. But it's funny because the tumor is here. It's on the right side. It's almost central, but it's kind of like a little bit to the left, but right here it's in the right frontal lobe where it says focus, memory, concentration. But as we know, the right side of our brain tends to be more of our creative side. And I was like,
Right.
what is this telling me about myself? So kind of pondering that. And then the other thing that I've been thinking about, and like you said, don't have all the answers. I'm just sharing my experience at the moment. And I'm an Aquarius, and I don't know how many people, follow astrology. I'm going to say probably a little more because we're more on the spiritual end than probably the folks that follow you. As we know, Pluto is in Aquarius right now. And apparently, Pluto is a planet that brings a lot of change, but like not just slow change, but like rips it all out, and like we're remodeling the whole kitchen, remodeling the house. And what I've been hearing over and over in my astrological like little YouTube channels, people that I follow, they constantly say if you're an Aquarius, and everyone who has any kind of Aquarius placement will experience, Pluto in their life in different ways, but main sign Aquarius, because Pluto's in Aquarius, they're saying that you will not recognize your life by the end of 2024. And apparently 2024 is a number 8 year. So 8, I understand it's completion, also like
Yeah.
transformation and things like that. So for me, when I was like, okay, I started to dig in not only just the medical side, because I wanted to understand that. And I was really fortunate and I found a good doctor. I went to the UCLA Neurosurgery Center in LA. So I was fortunate. And I found some doctors online, and I did some YouTube searching. No super high tech stuff, but just general YouTube. And I found some doctors that had put out videos, and I found out that the doctors at the neurosurgery center at UCLA, they put on the meningioma symposiums, like I don't know if it's yearly or biannually or
Right.
whatever. So they were pretty much top notch. And I'm sure there are others in the country, but this one resonated with me. So I went out there and I was able to find that. But where am I going with this? Yeah, so okay. So I've not only been exploring like the actual physical, just three-dimensional, how do I take care of this, from a physical standpoint. I explored the energetic potential for sound frequency or frequency healing, like that you had suggested to me, which I think is a beautiful option, and I really wanted to do that. But the one place that I saw that had it, my insurance didn't cover it, and so I found out like the surgery is like $206,000, and I was like, oh no, I gotta stick with the conventional surgery. Yeah, it's a lot of money. So fortunately, my insurance covers the majority of that, so I don't have to pay like 6 figures or 5 figures or whatever.
Right.
I don't have to mortgage my house to like pay for that, so I'm blessed in that regard. But I also wanted to explore and understand what are the spiritual things, and like how is this related to a lot of these energetic shifts that are happening, because as a main sign Aquarius, I'm like, okay, what how am I going to transform?
Right.
Obviously I will physically transform. I'm going to have this surgery, and I found out I don't have to they won't shave my whole head, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do like a faux hawk and be like, all right, let's rock this. Hence the pink. I put some pink in my hair because I was trying to find ways energetically and spiritually, because pink, the frequency of love. So I put some pink in my hair to kind of give it a little bit of love. So doing things on a different level other than just the physical medical level. What can I do? And I think, to answer your question of why the depth of my response with regard to love, it's like, I think what this meningioma is also giving me, I'm like, okay, let's look at this. They say from more the medical perspective that it could be like hormonal or exposure to ionizing radiation. And, it's like, yeah, the hormones, I'm a woman, in my 50s, so definitely some hormonal changes there. But then also interestingly, it's like I work my day job, I did found whole earth engineering, but that's a labor of love for me that I'm kind of moving into that when I retire full time, but I do what I can. And right now we're really blessed. We were partnered with Stevens Institute of Technology for the water distribution project in Peru. So that's exciting. So I work to try to connect the community in Peru with other resources that have like deeper pockets than mine, because I'm still working full time. So I work for the Department of Energy, which, who knows? There are so many tests and things, and just even background exposure to ionizing radiation. It's we all get some form of it. So I don't know. You know what I mean? But I wanted to explore, after identifying the physical level, I wanted to explore, where am I not being fully loving to myself? And where am I not, or where do I need, let me put in a more like positive spin, where do I need to reconnect with myself on some things? Because I recognize that sometimes I'm like, oh, I like to do this and I like to do that, but I don't actually do it. I know I have the love for it, and I get joy and just love from doing something, like singing or like doing some art, but it seems like I've allowed my world to kind of encompass me, and there's no judgment on that for me, because we're all really busy, like 9 to 5, and like 3 dogs. I never imagined that. I'm like, wow, how do people, I don't have any kids, so I'm like, how do people do with children? It's like so hard. And then even some of my coworkers who've been married that don't have kids, they talk about the challenge of really maintaining the communication and the love in their relationship, when they don't have the extra demands of children. So it's the way that our social structures have been set up. It seems like we get compartmentalized in how we can, express ourselves So for me, I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, how do I need to shift the way that I'm putting my intention and attention, or attention, to be
Uh-huh.
intentional, for my energy to show up in the world? Because I feel like the fact that it's like this little blob, I don't know what to call it.
Uh-huh.
I was calling it my space alien baby here in this particular area. I thought it was very interesting. It's like, what is this telling me spiritually and energetically about what I need to do for myself? And to bring it on another level, one thing that I also was really thinking about, I was like, hmm, I was like, is this also, because it's focus, memory, concentration, creativity? I'm like, is this also like a culmination of all of the work that I've done spiritually, emotionally, psychologically with regards to the trauma in my from my family? And like, because it turns out that a meningoma, and I thought this was interesting, is not actually a brain tumor. It's in the meninges. Like, you have your skull, and then here's your brain, and then you have three layers, or called your meninges. And I think one's like the dura mater, and I'm not a doctor. I am a doctor, but not that kind of doctor. Not the medical doctor. I just know that
Right.
one's like the dura mater. So there's three layers, kind of like a lasagna, three layers that are actually epithelial cells. So they're this layer of like that membrane when you're going to cook your chicken, and it has like that little membrane over the muscles, kind of like
Right.
that. It kind of lubricates your brain, and between your brain and your skull, and you have like another main sinus cavity there too. So the meninges are actually epithelial cells, or actually skin cells. So it's not actually your brain, you
Okay.
know. So it's actually like a skin tumor kind of thing. So I
Huh.
thought that was
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, I don't know too much more than that extent of my knowledge. Again, PubMed or WebMD can give you a little more
Yeah.
knowledge if you have more curiosity about that. But what I thought also, your skin is that layer that protects you from the outside world. It's like it holds all your organs, and it's your protection. It's that interface between
Right.
your inner world and this
Right.
outer world. And so I just thought, like, is this also kind of a the word purge, but I don't know if that's the right word. Is this tumor also like a manifestation of all the work that I've done for my ancestors and all that? Similar to when people do an ayahuasca ceremony. It's like they drink the ayahuasca, and then they end up purging. They either purge like orally, or they purge the other way. It either
Right.
goes up or down, depending on how your system, wants to clear that out. So I was like, huh, is this another form of like my body somehow, because my skin is the thing that's outside to the world. It's the thing that's protecting me from the inside and the outside. Is this a form of like all of this stuff, getting cleaned out, and then somehow it got there, and now did spirit decide to put it here? Because it's almost like near my third eye. Is this like something that I physically need? Because we are in the physical space. I'm definitely a believer that like everything from the subtle energy spaces manifests, and kind of like rain, you've got like water vapor, and then when you get more concentrated vapor, you get the cloud, or you can get fog, and then more concentration, you get clouds, and then eventually when it's too heavy, it becomes rain. So you have this physical manifestation of like what we actually have in front of us right now, water vapor, but we can't see. And when it
Right.
becomes so dense, then it becomes rain. So I was like, is this a form of that, where I've done like so much work, and it's now a point where it just happened to collect there, because that is the area in myself that I haven't been honoring and like recognizing, where's my creativity, my connection to more of my femininity that comes out through my creative aspects that I haven't been doing? is that why it's here? And is it kind of almost like near like third eye space? Because I need to physically clear this. Because just like I was saying, you've got water vapor, goes to fog, goes to clouds, and eventually it's heavy to rain. Is this is this spirit doing that? And I mentioned the word surrender earlier. Is this what I need to do? Like, I need to trust spirit. Because I mean, the thought of somebody like, they're not gonna, well, yeah, they're kind of gonna put a hole in my head. I haven't investigated, I've been bad. I haven't investigated that because I think I'm just like, yeah, I'm just gonna let the doctor do what the doctor does. You know?
Little detail, but I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm gonna trust you. And I found the doctor that I feel calm. I'm like, I trust you. I pick you. You can put the hole in my head. It's like, I have some humor with it too. And I asked him, I'm like, okay, when you're in there, I want a superpower in exchange. Can you like rewire? And I asked him for energy manipulation. He was like, I'll see what I can do. I was like, sense of humor. I like you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm not making light of it, but I'm also just more like,
Well, wait a second. You
okay.
can't even say that you're not making light of it. We have to be able to laugh. I
Well,
mean,
that's what
you
I'm
know,
saying. It's like I'm laughing about it, but I know it's serious, but I'm also like,
yeah,
space
you
alien
have to be
baby.
able.
Now we know where the space aliens impregnate people. At least in me, they're like, oh, let's just stick it in her head. Kind of thing. So I got a space alien baby. And then, I found somebody, like I said, I'm like, I pick you, I trust you to put the hole in my head, because these are things that happen. I don't know if it's a space alien baby, but who knows? We'll find out, right?
Right, right.
And but it's also like I have to trust. I did my homework. I found a physician that I like. So the physical level, I'm trusting, and I'm trusting God. I'm like, okay, there's a reason. And then I'm looking at all the other spiritual, emotional things, and I'm like,
And that's
okay,
why we're having this conversation, is because the emotional piece is to engage, to communicate, to talk, and not just to hold this whole thing inside, because then that's not
yes,
helping you either. So we have to
exactly.
be able to have this conversation. We have to be able to giggle a little bit and laugh a little bit and be serious
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And let it all go versus
Yeah.
holding it all in, you
Yeah,
know.
and to your point, one of the things is, as you know, like I work for the government, so I told my director, I'm getting a faux hawk. I'm gonna shave my head and I'm gonna get a faux hawk and I put some color in it. He looked at me kind of confused. He's like, you can't wear a hat, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure he didn't know what a faux hawk was at all. And then I'm also like, to your point about laughing and also kind of embracing this adventure, because it's an adventure in my life.
Right.
It's like, I would have never gotten a faux hawk. I work for the government. You can't walk in there. Like, it's a pretty like, professional job, even though everyone wears jeans to the office now. Thank you, COVID, for that. No one's so formal anymore
Yeah.
with suits. But I would have never like thought to get a faux hawk or even put pink in my hair. So I decided like, all right, I'm gonna milk this. What can I get away with that I would never do, but that's also like honoring this journey that I'm gonna go on. It's like I'm gonna change my hair and just kind of go a little cray cray. And even though the doctor said he didn't have to shave it, I'm gonna get like in a couple of weeks, just kind of really get the faux hawk and get like those fake parts or whatever. I'd be like, look, I left you a
Right.
line, doctor. Follow the line. It's kind of So I figured, where can I have a little bit of fun with this that I would never do? It's like, where can I milk this so I can like get a little benefit out of it for myself,
Yeah. You
so
know,
yes.
so there are other people who are listening to this, and there are other people who are going through this. What what would you say to them right now? I mean, no, we don't have to have all of the answers. Yes, there's a plethora of emotional and physical and spiritual thoughts that go through your head every moment, all the time. But what would you say to them?
When I was listening to your question, the first thing that came was, it's okay to cry. It's
Yeah,
okay to cry, and to just it's okay to just let the way it's coming out. It's okay to let your heart sink within your body in that moment and just allow yourself to release and to cry, because it's like, probably like with me, it was unexpected. I thought I had a sinus thing. It turns out that the reason I couldn't really breathe through my sinuses is because the meningioma is kind of sitting near my sinus cavity. So it's changing the pressures in my head. So it never really had anything to do with
Your sinuses at all.
yeah, like my sinuses directly. I mean, I still may have some sinus things to do after, but the doctor's like, first things first. So, but it was really, I was unable to really breathe well because of the pressure changes. Because as we know, like sinuses deal with pressure. Hence, when it's like cloudy, I always know it's going to be a storm because my head, kind of thing. I would feel that. So feel those pressure changes. So again, I think it's okay to cry. Allow yourself that space. Like you talked about holding space for me. And I think one of the things we need to learn also, and I'm working on this, is hold space for myself. Allow myself to have those moments where I've cried, because I know for me, there have been some moments where I felt overwhelmed with life and I cried, but looking in the moment and then looking back, I think it was also because there was an unconscious, what's the word? Unconscious recognition. Like I was crying. I can't say I was directly crying because of the meningioma, but I was just crying, you know. And I think that's what I'm trying to say, an unconscious recognition of like what this was. I hadn't really verbalized it, but it just on an emotional, maybe mental, psychological level, I was feeling, to go into the next thing, like you're saying, the fear. I think it's okay to be afraid. It really is. It's okay to be afraid. But like what I did was reached out to my friends that love me and hold space for me. But then I also did some homework and I found people that can help me, like, address this issue. And when I found someone, as I was saying with the doctor and all that, that I was like, I felt grounded in the choice of this particular physician. What I decided to do was I surrendered. It's like I did all my homework, did all that. And like I was saying before, I haven't really gotten to, I don't know how he's gonna do this. It's like, yeah, do your thing. Get the Home Depot appliance, whatever you need. And like, it's because that's what I know they use something like that, hopefully it's a little bit better, but I decided that I didn't really want to understand all the details of what they were gonna do. Probably after the fact, but I think sometimes once you do your homework on things and you recognize your fear, I can't do anything else except surrender. And what I mean by that is I surrendered to, for me, it's God. I know other people have other names for like the universe or whatever their higher power, their connection to source is. I surrendered to that. And I talked to spirit and I'm like, I'm scared. I've told spirit I'm scared because it's like, it's kind of scary, someone thinking about, someone like cutting your head open. But I've met other people. Like I had a friend of mine who told me he had a hematoma, I believe it was. So they literally had to like, kind of like in the, was it one of the Indiana Jones movies where they have like the monkey brain soup where they like open the skull. They literally had to do something like that for him. And what's amazing is like how our medical profession has really learned to do things. So at that point, it's like when you find someone that you trust, that you feel it in your spirit, you surrender and you allow. For me, I'm allowing God the space to take over. And then one of the other things that I did for myself, when I did an ayahuasca journey, I guess a couple of years ago at this point, I remember sensing my spirit guides at the edge of my bed. Like I have indigenous roots to Colombia, to the Pijaos. They were like a warrior tribe. And I remember feeling my spirit guides at the end. So I've called on to my angels, my spirit guides, my ancestors, and I'm like, hold me. So not only do I have beautiful friends like you holding space for me, I've reached out, and what I mean again by surrender is I've told my higher connection, God, I've asked my spirit guides, all of them, be with me. I think my hospital room is going to be kind of full, kind of thing.
I have
So
news for you, and I know that we're coming up on the hour. I even hate to even think that we have to end the conversation soon.
yeah, no
But
worries.
one of the things that I've learned and that we should be reminded about is that the room is full all the time.
Mhm.
You're never alone. And
Exactly.
the ancestors, the guides, the God's light, God's connection with you,
Hmm.
always, ever held at our loneliest moments. They're there. At our fullest moments, they're there.
Yes.
And understanding that, like we're halfway across the world. So here you're in New Mexico, I'm here in Africa. But the energy, it's there.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And and for me, it's seeing and holding you on the other side of having gone through it and just
Well,
basically
see,
say,
that's the thing I want to get to too. So I've already talked about the fear and the surrender, but there's also a level of excitement. That may
yeah,
sound strange, like she's excited to get a hole in her head. It's like, but I kind of am because I'm like, who am I going to become?
right,
What is this experience going to teach me about myself? And who am I going to meet? Not in terms of like our physical world too, but maybe like in terms of like understanding my spirit guides more, understanding that the spiritual aspects, the spiritual connections. That's what I mean. I mean, it'd be kind of cool too to, I don't know, meet some, interesting people at the hospital too. That's always great too. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like, what is this adventure? What is it going to bring to me? Because if I didn't have this, like, I wouldn't be going to California because that's where, LA. I wouldn't be
right,
going there for this. So it's like, I am going to interact with people that had I not gotten this, I would have never met, you
right,
know?
right,
So it's kind of exciting in that regard. It's like, okay, who am I going to become after this? Because whenever we have like life-changing experiences, we change, hence life changing.
that's right, we do,
So
we do,
yeah, so I wonder like, who am I going to become? And I feel like one of the things that I will gain, it's like, how much braver am I going to be? Because I've already felt braver in some things before of having this, because I think when you have something like this, it like your mortality really like gets in front of you, and you also realize, wow, we only have so much time on this earth, so if we want to do something, like, let's get to it, kind of thing.
right,
So I've been braver in like holding my boundaries and holding things for myself that I want for my life and for the interactions that I have and the people that I feel are more like energy drainers. It's like, I'm like, I send them love and like, okay, let's, minimal interaction or none if I don't need to, for anything. And I become braver with that, and braver in standing physically alone,
right,
like if I want to do something, I've never been shy about that, but now it's even more like, yeah, let's do it,
right,
just braver,
right,
braver in myself, because I recognize that this is a life-changing thing, and I don't really have anyone else who can fully own my experience. It's me. You can make space for me as my beautiful friend, like hold space and all of that, but ultimately at the end of the day, I have to be the one to step into that space and make those choices and create the amazing world. Like your little tagline, it's like, dream a beautiful dream or you will be dreamt. I
yes,
think this is part of that. It's giving me that courage. What's my dream? What is my dream that I want for myself in the future? So it's really like also pushing me in that direction to explore, like your tagline says, what is the dream that I want for my future? What do I want it to look like? I don't want
right,
someone else to dream it for me. I want to do that. And I think I'm excited about that part as well. What is this going to do for me? It's going to change my perspective on things. And and Pluto and Aquarius is going to help me. So it's like, so I've got a
So
lot of help.
so then I want to reserve the right to have a podcast with you after, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
I want to.
Oh.
Yeah, I was already thinking about that. The experience on the other end, I think is very important.
Yeah. This has been Dr. Linda Tello. Is
Thank
there
you.
anything else that you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I hope that this help. I know it will, but I just want to verbalize this. I hope this does help someone to maybe to explore their own emotions, their own perspectives on where they are, and hopefully what you and I have shared here allows people to give themselves permission to have like a cornucopia of emotions. You don't have to just have one. There's multiple ones, and one is not good, one's not bad. That's like a teaching we've learned from the Carol. There's no good or bad. It's all relative. It's all relative to the moment, So for people not to judge themselves if they're feeling afraid or feeling weak, it's okay. It's okay. For them to remember, as you were saying, the room is never empty. We're always supported. And I think your podcast is one of those ways that people can feel supported, so we can have conversations like this. And I know that people can reach out to you as well for things because you offer women's empowerment training. So you also guide people in ways that they can find that support from themselves, like from within themselves or themselves too. So no one's ever alone. So
Never, never. Well, this has been another episode of The Infinite Way where spirituality meets humanity. I want to thank you, Dr. Linda Tello, for sharing your story and for sharing all that is so, so important at this time and at this moment. So
thank you, Anelia.
Thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.